Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome on in to Inside the Huddle. I am your host, Lucas Hill. Thank you all for hopping along with us here on this beautiful Thursday night. Guys, we have a lot to discuss today. We got my way too early top 25. The 2024 season comes to an end. We also have a lot more to discuss around college football. Who's my way too early Heisman predictions for 2025? Who's the top quarterbacks, top positions? We also got some Senior Bowl talk as well. Got to talk a lot about that and more. But first, let's get a word real fast, and we will be right back. Hey. All right, so one of the things that we kind of talked about the other day was just overall what this season was all about. You know, we had a lot that went on Saturday. You know, we had a lot to talk about with the national championship. You know, and one of the great things about this is that when you look at where college football was this year, you know, I saw a post that said this is the best season that college football has since 2007. Somewhat, it's there. It was a wacky season, make no mistake about it. But who overperformed and underperformed this year in 2025? We'll talk a little bit about that and more. So, one of the great things that we got to talk about the other day was just the incredible ability of a guy like Jaden Greathouse. And I'll say this, guys, you better look out for Jaden Greathouse. To me, he probably is going to be one of the most underrated receivers in college football. I'm telling you right now. You know, nobody really knew about him up until you got to the playoff. And when you saw him make plays like he did in the CFP, he became Riley Leonard's number one target. So what's going to happen next year for Notre Dame? Let's talk a little bit about them. Let's talk a little bit about both teams going into next year. Notre Dame's going to lose a lot of production. Make no mistake about it. You're obviously going to miss your linebacking core and all the studs that you had. And really, if you look at where they were at this point in time against Southern Illinois or against Northern Illinois, and when you compare them to where they are this year, holy cow, this is going to be an incredible ride in 2025. So going into 2025, they should consider this one a playoff or bust mindset. So they have all the pieces for a replacement for Riley Leonard. It's obviously going to be C.J. Carr. Make no mistake about it. I personally believe it. C.J. Carr has all the intangibles and the ability to run a Mike Denbrock offense. I think he's perfect. You can plug him in. As soon as he learns the playbook, he's ready to go. I think he'll be an excellent fit for what's to expect in 2025 for a guy like that. C.J. Carr's ability to throw the football down the field is unbelievable. And what they do so well is just their ability to run the football or just throw the football down the field. That's something that they did a lot. Not really a whole lot last year, but I guarantee you, 2025, they're going to unleash the passing attack. Mike Denbrock's offense is all about spreading it out. And sure, CJ Carr's not as mobile as Riley Leonard is, but the guy has an arm. This is who you wanted. This is who you wanted. It was almost like a dream come true whenever he came in to the University of Notre Dame. Put on 20 pounds last year. Looking at his numbers, number 6 quarterback in the nation in the class of 2024, 6'3", 210 pounds. Has a lot of Mac Jones. So this is an analyst who recruited him based off of 247 Sports. Continues to fill in nicely as his high school career progresses. This is, by the way, during his junior year. Very cerebral little player who studies the game and thinks the game. That was evident in his sophomore, even though that was his first time as the full varsity starter. His processing speed should only get faster in his junior and senior years. Has good classic passing mechanics and accuracy. Arm strength is good, and he can get the football to any part of the field. Good enough athlete to get around in the pocket, escape the rush, and run if needed to be. But running will not be a major part of his game. There you go. So it's pretty easy to plug him in as a young freshman or a young redshirt freshman and have him play. I mean, the guy averaged during his 2 years in high school 68% completion percentage. Impressive. Absolutely impressive. So you know how good of a quarterback this dude can be. Remember, his grandfather, Lloyd Carr. So he has that football mentality already put in place. And it's perfect. It's perfect when you plug in a guy like that. It's perfect whenever you get somebody like that in your offense. And so that is exactly what this team is going to need, what Notre Dame is going to need coming out of him. But look, CJ Carr is not going to come in and automatically get it. You got to give him time. Spring ball is going to be the number one place where you want to develop him. And I think he has the tools to be able to be developed. I think he has the will and the overall tenacity and just willingness to learn this offense. And I think he'll be successful. Make no mistake about it. I have a lot of confidence in him, and I have a lot of confidence that he's going to be able to make plays when it's needed most. He's going to be able to develop as a young quarterback in this offense. And look, he's got this year and maybe next year to develop in this offense, maybe 3, depending on how much Notre Dame ends up paying him. So the future is very bright for Notre Dame at the quarterback position. Not only do you have that, you bring back Jeremiah Love, who should be one of the best running backs in the nation. I will say, though, he needs to be healthy. And if he's not, it's going to be a long year for Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love has a lot to look forward to. I'll just say that. But if he is unable to be as he was during the regular season, I mean, you looked at him during the CFP run. Apart from that one run that he had against Indiana, you could tell he was still bothered by injury. There was a lot of problems that he had to deal with, and it wasn't good. It was not fun for him to be in that offense, and basically he didn't do a whole lot. He really wasn't given the opportunity to showcase himself because he was hurt. And look, none of it is his fault, but you also have to realize that you're talking about a offensive line that struggled with staying healthy in the postseason. You lost your starting right tackle and a guard. You lost a lot of guys that really could have provided him and a lot of experience upon that offensive line. So I think that's going to be impressive. Offensive line, the top tackle tandem, and Anthony Capp and Charles Jaguar. I think that's going to be interesting. Obviously, you talk about that linebacking core, including Howard Cross, Jack Kaiser, R.J. Oben, and the DB, probably the best defensive back in all of college football, and Xavier Watts. But you're talking about a team that made it to the CFP with a bunch of other classmen. So that right there in its own self is pretty impressive. So, again, you still have a lot to do. You still have a lot to work on, but I guarantee you, give this team a lot of credit and give this team a lot of props going into next year. They're going to be fine. They're going to be the top weapons going into next year. Jaden Greathouse I'm going to give you a prediction. Jaden Greathouse is going to be a Biletnikoff Award finalist going into next year. Mark it down. Put some money on it. You're going to make some. I guarantee you. Jaden Greathouse will be a Biletnikoff Award winner. The momentum is going to continue from his CFP run. He's going to be the number one target for CJ Carr. You've got a much better quarterback that can get him the football. I guarantee you, Jaden Greathouse is going to have a 70, 80 catch next season, and he's going to go over 1,000 yards this upcoming year. Book it, guarantee it. That's my best bet going into next year. Coming up next, let's go for Ohio State. What do they have to get ready for next year? Well, it's obviously going to be an interesting one. So the biggest question is what you have at the quarterback position. Is it going to be Julian Sayin? Is it going to be Tavian St. Clair? So, I don't know, man. Tavian St. Clair has a lot of intangibles coming out of Bellefontaine High School. Bellefontaine is a very, very prestigious high school in the state of Ohio. Number 3 quarterback in the nation, number 1 player in the state of Ohio. So he's been there. Julian Sayin. Number 10, 5-star quarterback as well. I think he was the number 1 or 2 guy. So here's what a lot of people are saying, and I've got this from a couple of guys. Julian Sayin is reportedly believed to have the potential to be the best quarterback in Buckeyes history by several personnel within the building. Hey, we'll see, man. It helps knowing that you have Jeremiah Smith out to your outside. It also helps that Carnell Tate's going to be back. You bring in CJ Donaldson from West Virginia, who's a horse of a running back. 6'2", 240 pounds, playing running back. That's a freaking man out there. That is a man playing running back. And so there is a lot when you talk about what Ohio State's going to bring back. Look, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, they're going bye-bye. I can guarantee you that. So we can stop the speculation on whether or not one of the two is going to be back. I can tell you right now, they're gone. Jermaine Matthews is going to take on a bigger secondary role in the secondary as well, along with Caleb Downs, who is probably the best defensive back in college football. I think he took that over Malachi Moore. No, not Malachi Moore. I think he took over Malachi Starks as the best defensive back in college football later on in the season. Look, the trenches, when you talk about that D-line core, you got Larry Johnson leading the way, is one of the best in the nation as a defensive line coach. Look, this is going to be a really, really good team. Make no mistake about that. The receiving core, like I mentioned, Brandon Ennis going to have a big year. Got big play potential when I tell you. He's going to be he's going to be used in a bigger role. Stepped up in big situations, a la the Penn State game. He's going to be used in a lot more situations, a la the Notre Dame game when he had a big reception early in the game. Look, he's going to get his touches more this year. Him, Jeremiah Smith, and Carnell Tate are going to be the top 3 receivers that we've seen over the last several seasons at Ohio State. Ever since they had, I think, I could be wrong, but I think Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, and trying to think of that last one. But anyway, that's probably going to be the best receiving tandem that we've seen in Ohio State in quite some time. And it's going to be fun to watch. Shout out to everybody watching on the Instagram as well. Love y'all, boys. Hey, you got a rep as well. Anyways, let's go on to some more teams that just barely miss the CFP. Let's go to Texas. So there's a lot to look forward to in the state of Texas. Austin's going to be really interesting in going into next year because you're bringing in a first-year quarterback in Arch Manning that showed flashes of potential last year. I thought he should have played a heck of a lot more than what we saw from this year. Look, I thought he was going to get a couple of packages more of what Steve Sarkisian would use for him and what Tebow used back at Ohio or back in Texas, or not in Texas, but Florida. You didn't really see that a lot, especially in CFP time, which kind of irked me a little bit. There's going to be a lot to look forward to in Texas. And I think the expectation for fans in Austin is national championship or bust. Look, you're going to lose probably one of the best receiving tandems that in college football. Isaiah Bond's gone. Matthew Golden's gone. So you've got arguably one of the best defenses coming back with Anthony Hill, who's been in college football for, I don't know how long at this point. I feel like Anthony Hill's been around for the last 5 years, even though he's only a junior. Or going to be a junior at least. But no, look, Anthony Hill's going to be a top 10 draft pick going into next year. Make no mistake about that. When you talk about the edge rushers with Colin Simmons, who looked like a surefire number 1 pick going into 2027. When you talk about Trey Moore, who could be a top tier or defensive end as a redshirt junior, who should be back after next year. But I think both of those guys are going to be really dangerous coming off the edge. So when you look at that as well, Malik Muhammad is going to be a problem at corner. It took him 2 years. This was a young defense 2 years ago. This is one of the worst defenses in college football. And I feel like they're just going to get better and better. Pete Kwiatkowski's got a great thing going on in Texas. Make no mistake about it. Look, if Texas is going to be successful in 2025, they're going to rely on their defense. A lot of what they did last year, they relied on their defense. The Steve Sarkisian offenses might take a step back. You're going to lose a lot of dudes. You're going to lose Andrew Makuba. You're going to lose Alfred Collins. You're going to lose Bill Norton, Baron Sorrell. You're going to lose a lot of those D linemen that you're going to miss for next year. You're going to lose the whatchamacallit, the Jim Thorpe Award winner in Jahdae Barron. You're going to lose Jaden Blue, who's heading to the NFL draft. So with that, you have a lot to look forward to. And I mean, look, does it suck for Texas losing your top running back from next year? Honestly, not really. I don't know where Jaden Blue's going to end up in the draft. I think he will be a 5th-round pick, potentially. But you look at the starters, man. You get DK Moore or DeAndre Moore from last year. who's going to be a problem for defenses. You talk about DJ Campbell, who's only going to progress better as a senior. Look, I'll be honest. DJ Campbell had a pretty rough game. I mean, if I'm being honest, or actually, that wasn't DJ Williams. That was Cam Moore that had a rough game, or Cam Williams. Yeah. Yeah, he had a rough game. I'm against Ohio State. But no, this defense is going to be elite. You bring back Baron Sorrell. You bring back Trey Moore. You bring back Colin Simmons. You bring back Anthony Hill, Leona Liafu, Malik Muhammad, Michael Taffy. Michael Taft, to me, is the definition of what a Longhorn is. I mean, the guy was born and raised in Westlake, Texas, right next to Austin. The guy's a second-team All-American. I think that when you look at a guy like Taft, the guy's a guaranteed multi-millionaire going into next year. I think if he can develop his game, the guy can potentially be a first-round draft pick. The guy has that much talent with him. And I think it's going to be even better for him going into next year. CJ Baxter's back after missing last year with an injury. CJ Baxter showed a lot of promise. And I think that he will be really good next year. Make no mistake about it. I don't know if the running back load is going to be split like it was last year with Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue. I would expect that it does. I don't know how many reps Jarrett Gibson will get. I would expect him to get more. You know, he showed out a little bit. I mean, he got 78 carries. Ran for 5 yards a carry, dude. The guy's a dangerous back, too. The guy can flat out play. So, I don't really know with what to expect from Jarrett Gibson or anybody like that. But I think this running back room is going to be very deep. Make no mistake about it. When you talk about Jarrett Gibson, when you talk about Trey Wisner, when you talk about CJ Baxter, who's back, those three are going to be the big workhorse. And the option game with Arch Manning and with those three is going to be a problem for defenses. Make no mistake about it. The playbook is going to be wide open for Arch Manning next year. And he's going to be able to run this offense just the way he wants to. And it's going to be a perfect fit for them going into 2025. Let's talk about the Penn State Nittany Lions. So we're just going to talk about the CFP guys this year. You know? So Penn State this year, I think that they're a legit national championship contender. If Drew Allar can improve from what he did last year and be more of a consistent quarterback, he can really lead this team to a national champion. I know a lot of people, when you talk about great Penn State quarterbacks, the first name that comes up is probably Kerry Collins. And I would agree with them. Kerry Collins, probably the greatest quarterback in Penn State history. So, what do you need to do to develop his game? Andy Koltoneski really brought out a lot from him last year. So, with a guy like that, you still have a lot to develop out of him. The guy still struggles with making poor decisions. He's got to be more of a consistent thrower. Accuracy-wise, he can be better. And you also have to find a big play receiver, too. That's the problem with Penn State at the moment. The good news is that you have arguably the two top running backs in college football in Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Obviously, you're losing Tyler Warren. You return almost all of your starters on the offensive line. So, defensively, you miss Tom Allen. You lose Abdul Carter. You lose Kevin Winston. So who do you have? You know, there is a lot that you need to look out for at the receiver position, especially if you're Penn State. Penn State has a lot to look. Dude, they have a lot to get. They have to address the portal. You have to. If you don't, you're going to get screwed. You got Kyron Hudson, who should be pretty good. You know, I mean, Devontae Ross, Scout knows about him. He's talked about him a good bit. So, who else do you need to get? You got to address the tight end room. That's a big thing. So far, you're 0 for 3 on your tight ends. You've missed out on a lot that's gone to the SEC. So, what do you need to get from the portal? Well, you obviously missed out on Tanner Colzoil. Max Clare, who's gone, he's at Ohio State. He's going to be a plug-and-play guy. He's going to be really, really good. I really have a lot to look forward to with that guy. Jerry Cross, you obviously are going to miss. But I don't know, man. We'll just have to see. I know that there's still a good bit out there. I know Blake Bosma, verified 3-star according to on3.com. Bryce DeMorris is from West Virginia. Blake Bosma might be a bit of a stretch. We'll have to see. I don't think you take a chance on Eric Gilbert as much of a threat, of a deep threat as he is. The problem with him is that he just cannot stay out of trouble. I will say this, though. There's a guy that I've been following for a while that you need to look out for, who unfortunately just got committed to Middle Tennessee. You probably could have gone for Tavion Galloway, who is a really, really dominant tight end. We'll just have to see, though, man. I mean, there's so much that you could go out for if you're Penn State, especially at that tight end position. You know? It sucks that you missed out on that. You lose Jerry Cross before the Natty. It also sucks that you can't really find a tight end at the moment. You know, you lost your 2 tight ends that you needed for the season. So, who do you go for? I could give you a lot of reasons, but I think it comes from the high school levels. I think you got to just develop your dudes. That's what you did with Tyler Warren, and you're obviously going to have to do that right now. Let's go ahead and let's go to Oregon. Oregon, to me, we'll see what happens this year. I think if with Oregon, you've hit your ceiling with them. Because Oregon's ceiling at this point is you make the college football playoff, and then afterwards, you're a one-and-done type of team. It's either that or you make the semis, or you're a quarterfinal team, and then that's it. Apart from that, that's it. That is all you're getting. And does it make any sense? No. Does it pertain to anybody that this season's probably going to be the same thing? Probably so. And if you don't like that, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Because we have gone to the point in college football where we are relying too heavily on the portal. And look, Oregon is the same thing. We'll see what they're going to get. I think that I like the additions that Oregon got on the offensive line. When you talk about Emmanuel Pregnon, Isaiah World, and Alex Harvey from Texas State. This isn't going to be the same Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line that you saw last year. And I think that it's still going to, or no, they didn't even win the Joe Moore Award last year. But no, it's going to take a minute for this to be a Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line. You talk about 2 straight Heisman finalists in Bo Nix in 2023 and then Dylan Gabriel last year. Now you get Dante Moore coming in. Dante Moore last year, I think there was a reason why he didn't play at UCLA and why he wanted to transfer, was just simply because of the system that he was in. He hated Chip Kelly. He didn't like the Chip Kelly system, and I think that they gave up on him a lot. And look, I have no issue with Ethan Garbers. I think Ethan Garbers has a lot to prove at UCLA. But I think at the same time, you gave up on an elite kid. And I got to embarrass her.
Hey, Afton, I love you. I love you so much. You're the best girlfriend ever.
But I think they did give up on Ethan Garbers too. And when they did that, that paved the road for Dante Moore to get out of California. And I think he's in a good system now at Oregon. I think Will Stein is one of the best offensive minds in college football. Make no mistake about that. We all talk about what Junior Adams does at the receiver position. I think he's one of the best receiver coaches in college football. Will Stein is a future offensive coordinator at the NFL level. Make no mistake about that. But I think with the offense that you're going to run, it's going to rely heavily on Dante Moore. And the schedule favors you a lot. You don't really play a tough schedule. That's the thing. You play USC at home. You go to Beaver Stadium to play Penn State. You play Indiana at home. You play Wisconsin at home. And then you just have the Civil War. That's really it. So your non-conference schedule's garbage. You play Montana State at home. Well, I wouldn't diss on Montana State. They did just win the national. Did they win the national? No, they don't. They were a runner-up for the national championship in the CS level. You play Oklahoma State, who's probably going to end up firing Mike Gundy either next year or the year after if they don't. Which, by the way, they cleaned house. They got Todd Grantham from frickin' New Orleans, who's a former D-line coach and a former Florida defensive coordinator, who I don't know why they're hiring because, look, After the fact that you're wasting your time just watching me is just kind of crazy. There ain't nobody in this thing. I got freaking 9 people. 9 people watching me right now. But you love me. I don't get it why. And I suck at doing this. You know what I mean? I'm just garbage at talking about football. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I just, hey, nobody likes me. Anyway, you play Oklahoma State, who's borderline this close from firing Mike Gundy. You bring in Doug Meacham, who is a former Kansas OC. Why? I have no idea. I don't like the hire. I hate Doug Meacham. I don't know why you're hiring alma maters. It makes no sense. Go out and go get a freaking position coach and have him be your OC. That makes no sense to me. It's ludicrous. So, yeah, there's my rant on Oklahoma State. But I think that Dante Moore is going to get comfortable. You get Evan Stewart back, not as well as having Mekhi Hughes, who's Tulane native, by the way. Guy's a dominant running back. Reminds me a lot of Dalton Hilliard as well whenever he was at LSU. I know that's a long time ago, but hey, you got to talk to him about him. The defense, you're still bringing Mateo Uyunglele in the front seven. You also get Bear Alexander. Why is Bear Alexander still playing college football? The dude quit on 2 freaking teams. How does that make sense? You gave up a penthouse in freaking Southern California. All this NIL money because you ain't playing enough. You are a quitter, brother. I'm sorry. You don't deserve another Scally on here. Anyways, you talk about 2 5-star freshman corners that's going to contribute and to go along with Dylan Theinman from Purdue, who should be a plug and play. Look, the schedule is very favorable. The schedule is going to benefit Oregon at the end of the day. They're going to still if they're going to be at least 11-1. It wouldn't surprise me. If they go 12-0, it doesn't surprise me. If they're back in the Big Ten championship, it's not going to be surprising. And if they're the number 1 team at the end of the day, it's not going to surprise me either. Let's talk about Georgia. Look, it's Georgia. What do you expect? Georgia's been Georgia for the last God knows how many times. God knows how many years. You know, Georgia's one of those teams that it doesn't matter what they do. They're still going to be back better than ever. Georgia has always been like this.
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail. The person you're trying to reach is not available.
Anyway, look, you're going to lose a lot of dudes on the defensive line. You're going to lose Jalen Walker. You're going to lose your All-Americans, Jalen Walker, small-minded, Michael Williams. You're going to lose Nazir Stackhouse, Chaz Chambliss, Warren Brinson, Tyron Ingram Dawkins, Malachi Starks, and Dan Jackson. All of those dudes gone. But there is a lot of production from a very good defense that are coming back. And there's a lot of guys that you still need to look out for. When you talk about 4 starting offensive linemen, your 2 All-Americans in Dylan Fairchild and Tate Ratledge, Jared Wilson, Xavier Truss are hitting the deuces and gone. You lose Trevor Etienne. You lose Arian Smith and Dominic Lovett. Obviously, you're losing Carson Beck. So now in comes Gunnar Stockton going into his first year. But he is getting a lot of help next year. You're obviously bringing back London Humphreys, Oscar Delp, and C.J. Allen. Or London Humphreys and Oscar Delp on the offensive side of the ball. Not to mention, you're bringing in Noah Thomas, Micah Bell, and Zach Branch. So make no mistake about it. Gunnar Stockton is a great quarterback. In my opinion, he has an opportunity to do what Carson Beck couldn't do, and that's be consistent. Gunnar Stockton was not to blame for what happened in 2025. He just wasn't. And the thing about it is that if you looked at what happened, special teams was a big issue. You know, you're talking about a Georgia team that was 2 or 3 plays away from being an 8-4 team. 8-4, 9-3 team. You looked at what happened against Florida. You're a healthy DJ Lagway away from getting it handed to in the cocktail party. You looked at what happened in, let's see what else happened. You looked at what happened against, I don't know. I'm trying to think too. Against Texas a couple times. You looked at what happened, heck, against Kentucky when you didn't play consistently. You looked at what happened when you played Georgia Tech when you went to 8 overtimes. Had multiple opportunities to win that football game and to get out of Athens with a win. Well before. It was even overtime. We're going to try this again. But obviously, we know about Georgia. Georgia's still going to be back in the.
Call has been forwarded to voice.
Georgia's going to be back in the SEC title. I can guarantee you this. You know, Georgia's going to have another schedule where, look, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be questioning them. Here's what it looks like. You play Marshall, you get Austin Peay, you play Charlotte. Actually, the schedule's already set up. Early on, it's going to be a struggle. You go to Neyland Stadium and play Tennessee. You play Alabama at home, Kentucky at Auburn. Let's see who else. Ole Miss, Florida in the cocktail party, Texas, and then Georgia Tech at Mercedes-Benz. So it's no longer going to be a back and forth between Athens and freaking Georgia Tech Stadium, whatever it is. So, or at Bobby Dodd, excuse me. Or at the Flats, as they call it. But, hey, you never know. Anyways, you know, when you look at where they'll be at the end of the day, so Georgia's still going to be Georgia. They're going to be back. I think receiving-wise, they're going to be much better than what they had last year as with 36 drops. I can tell you that's never going to be acceptable for Georgia. Glenn Schumann is still going to be back there, and it's still going to be the Kirby Smart era over at Georgia. Let's continue along. Where does Arizona State go? Let's look at them as well. That's an interesting one. I'll say this. When you look at Arizona State to me was an interesting team. You know, obviously about the road they had last year. But when you look at this team, they're going to be probably the best team in the Big 12. Wouldn't surprise me. You bring back Jordan Tyson, you bring back Sam Leavitt, who's going to be more of a pass-first quarterback this year. I think with what you had with Cam Scadaboo, I think you relied heavily on the run game. Now that Leavitt's going to be there, I think you have a lot more pieces to work with. I think he's going to be very, very efficient down the stretch. I think he's going to have a lot of fun with the football. I think he's going to have a lot to look forward to. So, and look, Kenny Dillingham is bringing a great, great program. And I think that it's only going to be up from here. Marcus Arroyo isn't going anywhere. Brian Ward did a great job last year as a DC. And the schedule, again, favors them. Non-conference looks pretty promising. Northern Arizona at Davis Wade against Mississippi State and Texas State. I'll say this. Texas State was a tight one last year. We'll see what happens then. The Big 12, to me, is going to determine between them and Iowa State. I feel like that matchup with Rocco Becht and what Sam Leavitt is going to bring, I think it's not going to be as much of a blowout as we saw in the Big 12 title. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people are going to imagine. I think with both of those quarterbacks and what they bring back, I think both of them are going to be contending for the title of the best quarterback in the Big 12. And there's going to be a lot to look forward to from this team going into next year. Let's talk about Boise State. Man, what a season Boise State had, man. Boise State, look. You're going to lose a lot of dudes. We all know about Ashton Jeanty. He's gone. But can they do it again? Can you look at what this season is going to look like? You're obviously losing Ahmed Hassan and and Ashton Jeanty. Everybody knows about that. Well, what does Maddox Madsen have going into next year? Is Maddox Madsen's only a redshirt sophomore. He's still got a couple of years left for him. I think Spencer Danielson's roster is going to be very, very good. Make no mistake about that. Make no mistake about it. So I think that the quarterback position is going to be very, very good. Maddox Madsen is going to have this offense revolved around him a lot more, especially with the weapons that he's going to have. He said he's going to take another This is what Spencer Danielson said in a January press conference. I think the absolute world of Maddox Madsen, how he played last year and how he helped our team, was an absolute relentless competitor. He's going to take another big step this year. Maddox Madsen's best football is in front of him. I really do believe he is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, period, point blank. Wow. So, obviously, it doesn't help that you do lose a guy like Malachi Nelson, who's at UTEP right now. Malachi Nelson's story is pretty interesting. We'll probably dive into some of the top quarterbacks and how NIL has basically been deceiving them a good bit. But what does the running back room look like? Well, you obviously look at losing Ashton Jeanty. Well, you're obviously not going to have him carry the football almost 400 times. What about Sire Gaines? Sire Gaines should be an interesting one. 6 foot, 193 pounds. We'll see what happens with him. Guy has a lot of potential. I think it was a Mountain West Freshman of the Week in the first year of the season. 3-star coming out of high school. So last year didn't play a whole lot, but hey, 12 carries, 110 yards against Georgia Southern is pretty impressive. Consistent force. But I think if he gets healthy this year, he's going to be the number one back going into this year. I think receiver-wise, it's going to be really cool. Latrell Caples is going to be really good this upcoming year. I think that Matt Lohr and Matt Wagner, both of those dudes are going to be really good. Secondary-wise, you return 4 starters up front. You look at where they're going to look like next year. Jaden Vergen-Morgan as well as Braxton Feely. Both of them are going to be back. Andrew Simpson, Marco Notarini is going to be back. And that defensive back-wise, you're going to lose a lot of dudes. You're going to lose a lot of dogs. Let me just say that. You're going to miss a guy. You're going to miss that pass defense who, by the way, didn't perform very well last year. 241 yards a game. Make no mistake. You know what I mean? Spencer Danielson says they're fixable. Most of the problems, they came on 50-50 balls. We'll just see, man. Ty Benfield, Amarion McCoy, Jeremiah Airby. Benfield is the guy that is going to be the leader of that group. 2 interceptions and led the Broncos in tackles last year. So it's a tough way to respond after what was a really downtrodden season for them, I should say. And your pass defense has to get better. You got torched against Penn State. And if you want to be back in the CFP this year, your pass defense has to get better. Let's talk a little bit about our top quarterbacks going into next year. Because I've been really excited to break this one down. So let's kind of break it down for me. I got for number 10, you may not like it, but honestly, it is what it is. I'll say this. Many of you are going to not like some of my list, But again, this is just what I've compiled. I've got Drew Aller coming in at number 10. I think that he still has a lot to develop as a passing quarterback. I think that when you get him in a much better position, and I think with what you're going to get with Andy Koltneski's offense, it's going to get better. Make no mistake about it. But I think last year, I think he's probably the one with the biggest stress going into next year, I should say. Just knowing all that he has to do, knowing the receivers that he's got, knowing the running back room that he's going to have. But I know that he's still going to have a lot to develop as a young quarterback, as he should. But I will say this, is that he's not really going to be farther down the road, but I just don't see him being a top 5 quarterback yet. Now, of course, my mind can change after this upcoming year in 2025, but we still have a long ways to go up until then. At number 9, I got Jalen Daniels. Now, this is an interesting one that I thought was pretty peculiar for me. And here's why. When I look at Jalen Daniels and what he has to offer, there is so much that we could be talking about, especially with he's more of a what-if quarterback to me. But I do think that this year has to be it. I just have a lot of confidence in Jalen Daniels. I know last year was an underwhelming season for him. But I think in big-time situations, that's the Jalen Daniels that you're used to seeing. That 3-game stretch where he played Colorado, BYU, and Iowa State was his best performance. That was the best couple of performances. Actually, the last 5 games were his best performances of the season. I mean, the guy was truly unbelievable. It doesn't help that your offensive line was horrible. I know that you took a step back in completion percentage-wise. I know it wasn't what you did in 2022, but I still think that a healthy Jalen Daniels and a more complete Jalen Daniels is going to be the difference maker for this Kansas Jayhawk team. And I think that they're able to finally take that next step. And I'm going to make a bold prediction. I do think they do get competitive in the Big 12. I think they get back to an 8-9 win season. I think that it's going to be back. There will be okay. I can promise you that. You know, it was hard losing Andy Koltneski. You're obviously getting used to a new offense. It didn't work out at the end of the day with Jeff Grimes, who's at Wisconsin as the OC. You bring in Jim Zabrowski, who's now the full-time offensive coordinator. You also bring in Matt Lubbock, who's going to serve as the tight ends coach and was an offensive coordinator at Nevada, also a former OC at Washington, Oregon, Nebraska, and other places. So we'll see. It's definitely not going to be easy. You're losing Brian Borland, who just got fired this past year. DK McDonald, this is his news. This is his team. Or actually, he retired. My mistake. But no, I think Kansas does take a step forward. You know, I don't see them winning the border war, but I do see them being a 7-8 win team. I think that the likely games that you do get the victories over, Utah, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, Fresno State, Wagner, that's 5. The Sunflower Showdown is going to be interesting going up against Avery Johnson. You were very competitive in that game last year. Had a lead late in the game and just blew it at the end of the day. But I do think they get better. On the road-wise, UCF's probably your best bet. Arizona potentially for a 7th win. I think that 8th win has to be an upset, either against Iowa State, Texas Tech, Missouri, Kansas State, even West Virginia. So one of those games, I see this team being in a 7-5 and 8-4 season, and I think it's primarily because of Jalen Daniels' improvement from what he had back last year from 2024. Coming in at number 8, I got Nico Iamaleava. Nico Iamaleava to me he's got 1 year on full year under his belt. And I think the pressure that he was under last year was incredible. Make no mistake about it. I think Nico has a ceiling is huge. I mean, incredibly big. So when you look at where he's going to end up in the next few years, I do see him being an elite quarterback. I think that Vanderbilt gave us a great example of such, of what he has to offer. That right there was probably his best game of the season. You know, when you looked at what he did, 18-26, 69% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, just the 1 interception. Problem is that his offensive line was really, really inconsistent. You know, I mean, you needed to get something out of them next year. You're going to lose a lot on that offensive line as well, but you start to think that next year is a big year for them. And just to find out, because me and Cole Thompson talked about this Wednesday on Texas Sports Unfiltered, is that this year is going to determine what's the ceiling and what's the floor for Josh Heupel's team. The floor right now for them is likely a 8-4 or 9-3 season. The ceiling is potentially a 10-2 and a first-round playoff exit for now. But I don't know, man. We'll just have to see what happens going into next year. Number 7, I got Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck's going to have a lot to look forward to next year. Because Carson Beck, to me, if he plays the way he did in the second half of the season, he will be a good quarterback. But if he plays like he did early in the start of the game, early at the start of the season, we'll see. The defense is going to be a big question mark. Ruben Bain is a great defensive lineman, but you need a lot more coming from your defense. You bring in a defensive coordinator from Minnesota who was a top 10 defense consistently, or was a top 10 defense last year in Corey Heatherman, who I love. I've been following Heatherman ever since he was at JMU under that Cignetti tenure. So, look, there's a lot to look. Look, I think that there's so much that you could see from JMU, from Carson Beck next year, is that if he doesn't improve this year with the weapons that he has around him, you're obviously going to lose Xavier Restrepo. You're going to lose that great tight end that you have. But can he be healthy? And will he be 100% by the time the season begins, still dealing with that UCL tear? Coming in at number 6, I have DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway, to me, may be the best young quarterback in college football at the moment. Lagway's got a lot to look forward to, and I think that with what he brings to the table, with his skill set, is going to benefit him in the long run. Elusive runner, can get outside the pocket, and I think he has a lot to look forward to. Florida's going to rely on him a lot this year. He's got some weapons. And you've got some guys from the portal. You've got some guys from the recruiting tenure. The biggest thing that you need to address is the tight end position, but I think other than that, you will be just fine with Lagway under center. Coming in at number 5, I got Lenore Sellers. We're going to run through this very quickly because we've hit the hour mark. Lenore Sellers, to me, has a big upside. I think that the season that he had last year was incredible. Even without a top-tier offensive line, this was a great quarterback. I mean, the offensive line was a weak point for them last year, and you just saw him consistently make plays and play his game. You saw Lenore Sellers be Lenore Sellers after you got past the first half of the season, and once you got into the middle of October all the way through the rest of the season, he was Lenore Sellers. That's why I think South Carolina is deserving of a top 10 and ranking going into next year. We'll see what the pollsters believe. I doubt that'll happen, but again, what do I know? Coming in at number 4, I got Arch Manning. Arch Manning, to me, I've already kind of mentioned him a little bit. Should have been more involved in the Texas offense last year. Now he's going to be given his opportunity. I think he's going to elevate in that position. Coming in at number 3, I got Garrett Nussmeier. Nussmeier, to me, is the Heisman favorite at this point, especially with the amount of dudes that you've gotten in the transfer portal. And I think that this team is going to improve going into next year, and he's going to be a really top-tier quarterback with all the talent that you have surrounding you. Cade Klubnik coming in at number 2. It wouldn't surprise me that he does end up number 1, but with just the type of season that he's had, bear with me. I got to go get my dog in the kennel. Oh, we'll be right back in just a minute. Okay, anyway, Cade Klubnik to me is going to be a top-tier quarterback going into next year. I think he got a lot of hate. He went under the radar last year, just threw 36 touchdowns and only threw 6 interceptions. And I think if Clemson is going to have to rely on him going into next year, it wouldn't surprise me that Clemson goes back to the CFP, and I think they'd improve from what they did last year. And number 1 for me, it shouldn't be a surprise to many, but to me, John Mateer is the best quarterback going into next year. I know. Believe me, I'm aware that, Oklahoma, they don't have a top-tier quarterback, or they don't have an elite receiver. They don't have this, they don't have this. John Mateer is going to lead this offense. You're talking about one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks that combined for 44 freaking touchdowns last year. Not to mention, Ben Arbuckle is going to be there. Ben Arbuckle is going to be your offensive coordinator in Norman, so you better be grateful for that. Because he has a lot of potential there. With your offensive coordinator there, you're going to have a lot of fun in this offense. So, if you want to complain about what his offensive philosophy is, John Mateer is the perfect person for it. John Mateer is going to be a dog next year in Norman, Oklahoma, and it wouldn't surprise me that he's one of the best quarterbacks in 2025. Guys, we have officially hit the hour mark. Thank you all for listening in to Inside the Huddle. We appreciate all of you for joining us once again. You guys have a great rest of the night. You have been Inside the Huddle, and we'll break it out and see you all tomorrow.